Hi, I'm a Possum and I find garbage. Today's garbage is How to Train Your Dragon, a live-action remake of the animated film from 2010 about a scrawny Viking boy who rides a bad dragon. Let me rephrase that. He finds a dragon and earns its trust, then learns how to ride it, and tries to convince his Viking tribe who doesn't respect him that dragons aren't bad. Shenanigans ensue. If you've seen my other recent reviews, you already know my stance on live-action remakes of animated movies. To remake an animated classic in live action is to suggest that it can be improved by making it not animated anymore, which is an insult to animation as an art form. But this time it's different, and not just because it isn't Disney who's doing it. I actually went into the How to Train Your Dragon remake with some small hope that it wouldn't turn out to be a total bastardization of the original because they actually got the writer and director of the original to come back. And he agreed to do it specifically so DreamWorks wouldn't bastardize it. I mean, ideally, they wouldn't remake it at all, but I'm sure it was some studio executive's idea and they would have done it with or without him. So they at least got someone who presumably cares about the source material for once, and doesn't think it's problematic and needs to be updated for modern audiences. But the thing about remakes is they only ever remake good movies, or at least successful movies. So there's generally not much room for improvement, so what ends up happening is they either change it and almost invariably make it worse, or they just do the same thing again and make it pointless. This particular remake is an example of the latter. It's not just beat for beat identical to the original, it's almost shot for shot, with some minor changes here and there. Changes so minor that they're hardly even worth mentioning. So I guess that's better than changing things and ruining it, but if the remake is so similar to the original, what was even the point of remaking it? If the two most likely outcomes of a remake are a bastardization of the original, or a pointless repeat of what we've already seen, then ideally they just shouldn't remake movies at all. The only reason they do is to capitalize on existing IPs that already have established fan bases. There's no artistic reason for it, it's just cynical, low-risk cash grabbing. This remake isn't bad, because it's practically the same movie, just with more realistic visuals, but knowing this movie only exists to capitalize on nostalgia makes it hard to recommend when the original already exists and is readily available. And it's hard to even think of anything to criticize it for because, again, it's basically the same movie. If you liked the original, you'll probably like this one, unless you're like me and you're just philosophically opposed to live-action remakes in general. So that said, I guess this was the best possible outcome we could realistically expect. It's not like the Disney remakes where they seem to intentionally miss the point because modern audiences hate morality. Like the recent Lilo and Stitch remake, which ends with Lilo going into foster care so Nani can become a career woman. Or the Pinocchio remake, where he's basically a good kid and only does bad things because he's given no choice or is forced to, and gets punished anyway. Or the Mulan remake, where she's just born with magic powers that make her just magically better than everyone, and has no self-doubt to overcome, and just needs to learn to stop holding back. The How to Train Your Dragon remake doesn't do any of that. It's true to the original, so I can't even really complain about it. So really, if you just have to remake an animated classic in live action, then I suppose this is the way to do it. Hey, remember in my review of Wish when I said DreamWorks was beating Disney at their own game when it comes to animation? Well, now maybe DreamWorks can beat Disney in live action remakes. Okay, so since this movie is pretty much the same as the original, and I can't really think of much to write about it, I'm just gonna spitball the rest of this video until I get to 8 minutes and just hope I come up with some kind of coherent idea. I guess to talk about the characters, they don't really do much to flesh out any of the characters. Like, something even though Disney remakes do, they'll at least attempt to kind of flesh out the characters a little more. They don't always succeed, or sometimes they'll do something stupid to make the character worse. But in this case, in How to Train Your Dragon, they don't even really try that. It's like every character is pretty much literally the same as they were before. There's no real improvement there. I guess I could talk about the actors. They got Gerard Butler to come back to play Stoic. You know, he did the voice of Stoic in the original, and I guess now they got him playing the live character, which I mean, he's a pretty big dude. He played Leonidas in 300, so if you're gonna get like a guy to play a huge Viking dude, I guess you get him. But like as far as I'm aware, he's the only actor who came back. I guess controversially, they recast Astrid as a black girl, and here's the thing about that: the Vikings, they got around, okay? Yeah, the vast majority of Vikings in real life would have been white, or, you know, what we would consider white in the modern world, because, you know, the concepts of, like, you know, the white race, the black race, and so on, that's all a recent thing, like, that came out in the past couple hundred years. But, you know, what we would the Vikings are what we would have considered white for the most part. However, they did get around. They traveled pretty far. They actually made their way to Africa, the Middle East, you know, places like that. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that they could have got, you know, like a black guy or an Asian person to be Vikings, you know, to, like, you know, join up with them. I don't know if that ever actually happened, but it's not impossible. And this is a fantasy movie anyway. It's not trying to be, you know, historical, so I'm not gonna, like, deduct points for that. I'm not gonna be like, oh, it's a woke remake with, you know, it's got black people in it, it's not historical. It's a fantasy movie about dragons. You know, it's whatever. But that said, there's such a small part of the movie. Like, there's this one black Viking and one Asian Viking. They appear in, like, 2 scenes. And their roles are so small that it's like probably the most blatant example of tokenism that I've seen in a recent movie. It feels like they were just, like, forced to put them in the movie, and then they try to minimize their role because they knew it would cause controversy and people would complain about it. But it's just such a small, tiny, minuscule, inconsequential part of the movie that's not even really worth talking about. I just figured, okay, well, people are gonna be talking about this, I might as well talk about it. So, but it's just such a small and inconsequential part of the movie that you can ignore it. You know, whether or not you care about if a movie about dragons is historically accurate. Anyway, visuals, I guess, it's fine. None of the special effects stood out to me as particularly bad. Toothless, the dragon, he looks more or less the way he did in the original, just more detailed. There's some shots, like, whenever he scrunches his nose and growls, he looks pretty ugly. But other than that, he looks pretty much true to his original design, so no real complaints there. I will say they did a pretty good job of recreating the village of Burke. If you took that town from the original movie and made it live action, that's what it looks like. It looks essentially like that. They did a pretty good job on the set design. I'll give them that. I guess I passed 8 minutes at this point, so conclusion, it's okay. I mean, I'm philosophically opposed to remaking animated classics in live action, but if you're not, this movie, there's not a whole lot to get mad at. Because, like I said, it's pretty much the same movie. You know, if I'm being totally fair, it's not bad. But I can't really recommend it just based on the fact that it's so similar to the original that if you've seen the original, and if you have a copy of it, or if it's on some streaming service where you can watch it, there's no point. Because it's the same movie. I don't know, like, comment, subscribe, support me on Patreon, send me your fan art, leave a comment for the algorithm, check my channel for other videos you may have missed in case, because YouTube doesn't always tell you when I upload. Bye.